Got to be on our toes. Okay, so my name is Ian Bernhoft. I direct the Humanities Forum, which is an initiative of the Humanities program. And the aim of the forum is each week to bring in a guest from somewhere else. It could be a scholar, a journalist, a writer, a business person. But basically, we want people to come in to share their research, to talk about their experiences, to talk about their work and the questions that animate it. And thereby, we can gather together as a community outside of class and grow in our appreciation for the humanities, among other things. So I'm going to hand this microphone off to my colleague, Professor Dana Dillon, to introduce the speaker, but I do want to give you the ground rules of the forum. There are 3. Well, the first one is just to tell you what's going to happen, basically, which is you'll hear from our speaker for about 45 minutes. We've got a Q&A, and then we wrap up at 4:45. At which point, there's a nice reception right down the hall in the great room, which is the only good way to start your weekend, basically. You should know that if you're looking at a screen right now, you got to put that screen away. We are absolute on that. You can take notes with your pencil, paper, etc. You can see the recording on our YouTube channel next week if you really want, but you don't need your screen out. So that's the harshest rule of all. The second rule, which is absolute, is that when we get to the Q&A, a student has to ask the first question. So get those wheels turning. Don't wait for your professor to bail you out, because they ain't gonna. And then the third rule is really just more of a suggestion, and that is, please do join us afterwards down the hall. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass this microphone off to Professor Dillon, who's going to introduce our guest.
Thank you. And I'm going to just cheat off my screen for 2 minutes, and then I swear I'm going to put it away for the whole talk. I'm so thrilled to share with you my friend, Dr. Andy Gustafson. I'm going to start with just a small story, which some people have heard many times today already. But last year I was at a Humanities Forum dinner. If you're a student and haven't gotten invited to a dinner, talk to somebody about how you can get invited to the dinner. But I was sitting there next to a business student with a minor in humanities, and he said to me, I feel like I'm getting 2 really good educations at Providence College, but I'm not always getting help putting it together, right? That upper campus core education, that humanities, and that business. And I thought, I know a guy. I want to come and talk to you. And I started talking with Dr. Bernhoft about bringing Andy Gustafson in. And so let me give you the official, academic introduction here. Dr. Gustafson got his PhD in philosophy and ethics at Marquette University, and he has served as a professor of business ethics and society at Creighton since 2005. Don't make me do the math. He's also founded and he directs something there called the Business, Faith, and Common Good Institute. So really, in a lot of ways, that intersection of faith, the common good, and business is central to his work and his agenda. But I think part of what makes Andy such an interesting speaker for us is, in addition to all that academic, business, professor, ethics stuff that he's doing, he's also an entrepreneur. And he's really shaped his business, which rehabs and then rents properties to folks. Often, you'll hear more about this, often to folks who might not be hired or be rented to by just anybody. And he does that coming out of a spirituality that's committed to using business to build unity and community among the people. Even while you're making that profit and doing good, you're also serving your community and building your community. We're going to hear more about that from him. It's called the economy of communion, and it's become something that's really central to his work. And I think the other thing about him is he's also a husband and a father of 2 small, gorgeously cute children. And he's really somebody who strives to live an integrated good life as a teacher, as a professor, as a husband, and a father. And I think he is going to be able to talk to us in some real ways about how business and living the good life can help us be better human beings. So please help me welcome Dr. Andy Gustafson.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It's great to be with you at Providence. And I've never been here to this college or to this city, so it's great to be here. So thanks for having me. My name is Andy. I grew up in a hog, corn, and cattle farm about 2 hours west of Creighton out in the middle of Nebraska. I have 5 siblings. The oldest sibling just graduated college, and then I was born in August. So there's quite an age discrepancy. If you can imagine graduating and then your mother calls you and says, hey, you have another sibling on the way. That was me a long time ago. So that's my family. I now live in Omaha. I've been there, like she said, for 20 years, and I am a professor, but I also do a lot of work with homeless and with rehabbing houses. So that's what I want to share with you today, sort of the intersection that I have between philosophy, business, and also helping others. So the title that I gave was How Business Can Make You a Better Person. I think a lot of times we think business is a soul-sucking activity. I have students who say, I'm going into accounting, but actually I don't want to go into accounting once I graduate. I want to go into nonprofit because I'm scared of the corporate world. And so my goal today is to help you think about what are ways in which you can go into business, and you should go into business if you really want to change the world for the better. I'm committed to that idea, and I think it's possible. So I want to talk to you more about that as we go forward. So you maybe know this quote from the Bible. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? I think about this a lot. And I'm not talking here about damnation or that sort of soul losing. I mean just that you get so distracted by the life that you live that you forget who you are in one way or another. It might be because you pursue so much money or pursue so much status or whatever that is, you lose track of things. And we know people like that, and they end up in divorce, or they lose other things, right? Because they get into the situation. So this is an important question for us to be thinking about at all times in our life. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? That can be publishing more than any of my colleagues, not to get more money, but to get more publications. And so then I'm going to beat everyone else. But I do that at the expense sometimes of my own soul. So you have to be careful about that. Another quote that you maybe are familiar with, if you're familiar with Albert Camus. I'm a philosopher at heart, and I love this quote, and it's from his book about the myth of Sisyphus. It happens at the stage set collapse, rising, streetcar, 4 hours in the office or the factory, meal, streetcar, 4 hours of work, meal, sleep, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday according to the same rhythm. This path is easily followed most of the time. But one day the why arises and everything begins in that weariness tinged with amazement. And this is maybe a description of a midlife crisis, but it can happen to you at any time. You just get into the rhythm, you keep on doing these things. I want to go forward, I want to go forward, I want to go forward. And you keep on doing that. Life is like that. Most of us are lemmings in our life. You are already doing that, some. When you were in high school and your friends started looking at colleges, you're like, oh, Jimmy and Jane are doing that. I better start looking at colleges. I'm going to go do college visits because my friends are doing college visits. Oh, they signed with somebody. I'm going to sign with somebody too. And now you're in college. Oh, my friends, they're starting to choose their major. I better choose my major. Right? And we do that. That's how we live, is we look around us and see how do other people behave, and that's how I behave too. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but you have to be careful because you might just keep on doing things the way everyone else around you is doing them and not choosing to do them for yourself. I had a friend that I hadn't seen since we dated when she was a freshman in college, and I happened to be in Chicago, and I called her, and she was a senior that year, and she's at Wheaton College in Chicago, and I said, hi, how are you doing? She said, great. I said, are you engaged yet? And she said, how did you know? And I said, well, at Wheaton, it's always a ring by spring, and that's what most of the Wheaton girls do. I just figured you probably did too. She said, yeah, I did. And I said, oh, that's great. Congratulations. But you can guess some of these things, right? And it keeps on happening. You're a bridesmaid at a wedding of your friend, and it's one of your last friends to get married, and you're like, I don't want to be the last one standing, so I need to get married too, right? And then our friends are starting to have kids. Oh, I should probably have kids too. And then you get older. You get to a point where you're a grandparent, or you're not a grandparent yet, but all your friends are. You start putting pressure on your kids. Hey, I want to be a grandparent too, and I don't have anything to do about it. You have to get on the ball, right? And so we keep on pushing. Even John and Jane are retiring, and they're doing some planning on getting an RV. Maybe we should think about doing that too, because we graduated with them in college. Yeah, we probably should do that too. And even John and Jane now, who are in their 80s, they are already planning their funeral arrangements so their kids don't have to think about it. We should probably think about doing that too. So you do this, right? You keep on going through life, oftentimes, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You don't always think about what's going on. So it's just important to stop and think, what am I doing and why am I doing it? You might feel a lot of pressure to make sure that you maintain the same socioeconomic status as your parents, and they're putting that pressure on you too. So you feel like, I need to go into business, I need to do it this way. Just slow down, it'll be okay. And realize you have time to maybe think that through. Don't rush into something. I love this quote from Frank Knight. He's a Chicago economist. He taught Milton Friedman, if you've heard of Milton Friedman before. He said, whatever our philosophy of human motives, we must face the fact that men do raise more corn to feed more hogs, to buy more land, to raise more corn, to feed more hogs, to buy more land. And in business generally, produce wealth to be used in producing more wealth with no view to any use beyond the increase of wealth itself. So in business, we maybe talk about profit maximization. You just need to want to make more and more and have more and more. A lot of people go into business because they want to make money. Of course, we have to make a profit for it to be sustainable. But is there anything beyond simply the increase and amassing of wealth to business? Is there some purpose beyond that? I think there can be, and it's up to you to decide and choose that you want business to be used in a different sort of way than just to create wealth. So we have a business, I'm going to tell you about it in a second, and we make money, but we also do a lot of other things as we practice business. I had a friend who was at Creighton Prep, taught there 31 years, and he said, I'm always trying to talk to my Creighton Prep kids and say, listen, you need to think about how, as you live your life, you're going to spend half of your waking days working in your job, whatever that is. How are you changing the world for the better? How are you transforming the world for God's glory as you do that? And they're like, yeah. I'm going to make a bunch of money. I want to be really successful, make a bunch of money. I'm going to give some back to Creighton Prep. He's like, no. But as you do business, how can you make the world better? Yeah. I'm going to make a whole bunch of money. I'm going to give a bunch to charity and to church and to Creighton Prep. He's like, no, I'm not talking about that. And that's the model we often think of, like, make a lot, amass a lot of wealth for yourself, and then give some of that off to charity and to the church. That's a great way to change the world through business. But how can we actually, in the practice of business, change the world and transform it and maybe become better people as we do it that way? So these are a few things I'm hoping to try to convey to you through what I shared. Business isn't evil, nor is it inherently a soul-sucking enterprise. You can be successful in business and also find spiritual enrichment through business practices. Getting into business is actually one of the most powerful ways to bring about good in the world, by directing and leveraging business practices towards the common good. And the most important thing is to discover what you've been called to, what your vocation is, what your purpose is. Then your trajectory will be clearer. And again, that doesn't come clear like by you having a weekend away to think about it. It becomes clear over time. So you just have to be patient sometimes to find that out. Purposes and callings. I have some I've been called to that you're not called to. Amos and Vivian are two of my most important callings, 3 years old, 7 months old. I adore them. I miss them today, but I'm glad I'm with you. This is my wife, Celeste, wonderful wife, Celeste. She's got a PhD in philosophy as well and teaches at the College of St. Mary. This is my family, extended family, all my siblings and their kids and grandkids, everything. Some of my students at Creighton. It's my vocation of teaching that I love. And what is this? I've also been called to be responsible for 95 toilets in the Midtown area. So I have a rental business. I've been buying properties over the course of the last 20 years while I've been at Creighton, bit by bit. And if somebody has a problem with their toilet in any of my rentals, that's my problem. That's part of what you pay for when you're a renter, is to not have problems you have to deal with. They become my problems. That's my risk. And so those are my 95 toilets I'm responsible for. God's called me to that in some sense. Each of us will have our own thing that we're called to. The economy of communion is a way of thinking about business, and I encountered these people in 2015. I'd been doing what I had been doing for about 15 years at that point, but I found them and I was like, these are my people. These are the people that think about business the way that I do, and they really helped me think through it. Pope Francis was a big fan of them, and he said, "You see the entrepreneur as an agent of communion. By introducing into the economy the good seed of communion, you begin a profound change in the way of seeing and living business." So as an EOC entrepreneur, we try to bring about communion in the world through our business practices, help bring people together. That might be bring the poor into unity with us. But there's also people that aren't poor in financial wealth, but they're poor in other ways, and help them as well. We'll talk more about that as we go forward. One way of thinking about the economy of communion is this. I'll read this quote from Michael Naughton, who's a great guy and done a lot on faith and business. EOC is founded on a desire to radically transform the very idea of what business is about, so it can be used fully in the service of helping the poor and contributing to the common good by transforming the priorities of market and economics. So you have individualism and free market capitalism on the one hand, and EOC works within that. We're in a free market, and there's good. If I'm in a free market, I can, as an entrepreneur, choose to use my resources however I want to. There's also the good from the communalism of socialism, where you're concerned about community. You're not immune from one another. We're in community. The problem with the individualism is sometimes we act like we're immune to anyone else. And I don't need to worry about anyone else. Every man for himself. That's not a healthy way to think about free market, but it can turn into that sort of individualistic way of doing it. So the EOC tries to bring both of these together, the communal approach of thinking how can we transform the world for the better through my own free choices to use my resources in the way that I want to within the free market. So the example of ours is communion properties. We buy properties often distressed. What that means is nobody else wanted them, or they were abandoned, or they're condemned by the city. Not all of them, but a lot of them. We fix them up, we rent them out, we build relationships with workers, tenants in the community. We've got 33 buildings right now, about 80 units, over 120 renters. Most of these are in Omaha, a few of them are in my hometown of Aurora. But we've got a lot of different stuff going on. So how do we do business differently? I think of it as investing not just money, but faith and hope. I'll start out with this, that I think all of us in some sense are lost causes that God decides to invest in. God gives us grace and mercy when we don't deserve it. And so there's this act of grace that we initially get and receive. And so that's how I try to think about what I'm doing in the world. One is difficult buildings. We work to rehab buildings that a lot of other people reject. They didn't see any promise there. We say, no, there's something beautiful here. Let's bring this back. Employees. Some of my employees from the fringes of society. These are employees that are not very employable by most people. It might be because of alcohol or drug issues. It might be because of past offenses. It might be because they have lupus, or just they haven't made good decisions throughout their life. But these are employees that we often will have work for us. And third, tenants. We provide grace to tenants who fall behind. I have one woman who's lost her job 4 times over the course of the last 10 years she's lived with us. And every time we've said, no, you'll get back on your feet. You'll be all right. And we'll kind of carry you through until then. So we do that for tenants. I didn't think about those at the very front. I like difficult buildings. I like redeeming things and bringing them back into life. So I like that. But I didn't really meet the employees or the tenants until after I got further into it. So we often make decisions for reasons other than just profit. And there's this notion of gratuity and reciprocity, that you give grace and then you hope for the reciprocity of that grace back to you. And a lot of times that's what happens, because that's just the way people are. We're gracious to them, and then they're loyal and they're generous back to us. Sometimes I give grace to people, and then they take a little bit more grace, and then they stab you in the back. And that happens sometimes, but more often than not, it does not. So the way I think about business then is it's relational, not just transactional. We sometimes hear the phrase, it's just business, nothing personal. But generally, our lives begin to get so messed up with theirs that their messiness is ours. That's part of the price we pay for doing business in this way. This is the first house that I had in Omaha. I knew it had been a drug house. I didn't know that it had a dogfighting ring in the basement because I didn't know what a dogfighting ring looked like. But it did have one. And this is where I first lived. It was just 3 blocks from campus. And I lived there for quite a while. Then a couple came and they couldn't move. They couldn't get their piano into the upstairs apartment, so they decided they wanted to use my apartment. So then I had to find another place to stay. And so I ended up buying this place, the green, red, and yellow house that I painted. And that's where I lived for a while. It was a 6-bedroom, 3-bath house. Way too much room for one guy. I was still single at the time. So I started having different people live with me. Eventually we had 8 people living there, and then I decided to ask my wife to marry me. And she said, I don't want to live with 7 bachelors because she's very unreasonable. And so we had to find another house. But this one, I still have my office in, and that's where all my bills come for my things. So I have my office stuff there, and then I have my home life at home. Gifford Park is a neighborhood that we're in. It's really close to Creighton, so we're right there. Dirty 3rd Street is what they used to call it when I first moved there. A lot of knife fights and prostitutes, and we've cleaned up a lot of the houses that are on the street. I walk on this street to walk to school every day because we live really close. This is just one example. When I first bought the house, there was a prostitute it was condemned. Nobody was supposed to be living there, but there was a prostitute on one side, Mike was on the other, then a couple upstairs. And I worked with them to find housing for each one of them, and then we started working on the house. This was a house that a friend of mine, he became a good friend and also worked for me a lot, Ismail, he lived behind it in his truck. And he said, hey, can I keep living in my truck back behind this house until you fix it up? It was November in Nebraska, which is pretty cold. And I said, well, why don't you live in the house? The plumbing's on and the heat's on, and you can help me. He's like, okay. So he did that. Did this move forward? Sorry. That skips forward a lot. Yeah, sorry about that. So Izzy was behind this house. So Izzy ended up working with me for 17 years. And I have some pictures about Izzy later. But this was the house behind which he wanted to live in his truck for a while. This is the inside, before and after pictures. It had been a triplex. We turned it into a one-family place now. There's some brothers that live there now. They're really great. This is inside. Oops, I've skipped one again. So this is another property. There's a nice story for this one, is that it'd been abandoned for quite a few years, and it was a 6-plex, and the homeless people had been going inside and using it, and the plumbing hadn't been on, but they'd been using the toilets. So you can imagine what the toilets were like after about 4 years of that happening. And so we drove up behind it, and when we came, I had Izzy with me and a guy that was a Omaha tribe, Native American, and Richard was with me and a couple other people. We drove up, and I was like, oh, there's like 20 homeless people in the back. What are we going to do? I don't want this to be an issue. But I knew they'd been living there. And Richard, as we drove up, he said, hey, there's my cousin. Oh, there's my brother-in-law. There's my sister-in-law. I'm like, Richard, you know most of these people? He said, yeah, I know like most of these people. And so I said, do you mind just telling them what's going on? He said, sure, yeah. So he got up in the back. He's a big guy. Richard was a really big guy. He got up in the back of the truck, a pickup truck, like he's giving a stump speech. He's like, brothers, cousins, sisters, my boss bought the building, and so we're going to start working on it today, so you'll have to find somewhere else. I'm sorry. And they were all like, yes, sir. Okay, yes, Richard. Okay. And they all just left because I knew Richard, and Richard knew them, and so I knew the right people, and he helped take care of that situation. And then that day, as we started that project, I know the guys knew about the toilets, and I said, I just want you to know right now that I'm the one who got us into this mess, and I'm going to take out all the toilets today. None of you have to take out any of the toilets. And they were like, okay, thank you very much. And so I took out all the toilets and put them on the truck and brought them to the dump myself because I thought, that's the least I can do. They shouldn't have to do that kind of gross work. So those kind of things and acting in that way with the guys that worked for me made us more like peers and like I'm the boss and they're the employee. And that's an important part, I think, of how you bring about unity through your business practices, right? Just one silly little example. Izzy, turns out, was a mason, and he ended up being able to do this kind of work. He'd never done tile work, but I taught him how to do it, and it was an easy jump. This is another property we bought. This is what it looked like when he bought it. It had a double homicide in it 4 years before we bought it. It's an 8-plex. We went in and really turned it around. It took quite a while, but it's a cool old building. We redeemed it too. So this is sort of the societal impact, if you want to think of it that way first. Societal impact since 2005, 28 properties purchased and fixed up in Omaha, primarily in our own Midtown neighborhood. Provided quality low to moderate income housing for people. Responsible for 95 toilets in the Midtown area. Increased taxable value of properties by 150 to 700%. established many business relationships and friendships, helped a variety of tenants in difficult situations, and have provided work and income for a variety of chronically underemployed people in Midtown. So that's kind of what we've tried to do over time, or in looking back, that's what we have done. There's also, for the finance people in the room, there's a financial impact. Invested over $6 million in Midtown Omaha over the years, spent about $70,000 per year in labor to employ local tradesmen, $70,000 per year in materials, $50,000 a year in public utilities, $80,000 a year in property taxes, $55,000 a year on insurance, $25,000 to $35,000 a year in interest to local banks. So this is, when you're in business, there's just a lot of things that are good for society that happen. I mean, we weren't trying to pay property taxes, but we have to, so that helps. The school system, for example. And these are just improvements that have happened to society through the way that we've run our business. So now I want to share a few more concrete sort of ways of thinking about business from an EOC perspective that have impacted how I think about things as well. So first one, it's probably one of the most important ones for me personally, is business as a spiritual practice. Pope Francis said, business is not only incapable of destroying communion among people, but can edify it, promote it. With your life, you demonstrate economy and communion become more beautiful when they're beside each other. Certainly the economy is more beautiful, but communion is also more beautiful, because a spiritual communion of hearts is even more full when it becomes a communion of good talents and profits. So we often think about, how does our faith speak to business practices? Like, what does the Bible or what does the church tell me to do as a Christian business person? We don't often think about, like, how can business turn into something that nourishes me spiritually in the way that I practice it? And that's the cool thing about practicing business this EOC way, is that the activities I participate in on a day-to-day basis in my business activities, I start to think of as spiritual challenges or struggles or opportunities, and those then can nourish me in certain ways. I see gifts that God gives through the interactions I get to have with other people and bring more people into community. So beyond charity, the EOC was not simply about making profits to share with the poor, but applying the folkloric spirituality in the business, which meant humanizing economic structure, starting with the business and the basic unit of economic activity. So again, Francis says, capitalism knows philanthropy, not communion. Simple to give part of the profits without embracing and touching the people who receive those crumbs. In the logic of the gospel, if one does not give all of himself, he never gives enough. So that's really hard. That's a really hard challenge for us as human beings. But it's not enough to like make a bunch of money and give it to United Way. But how are you engaging people who are really needy and who really need help from others and need that community with others? So we sort of bypass charity in some sense. I mean, that's not really what we're here to do. We even say that we eliminate the charity middleman because we charge less per month on average for studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. And these are outdated. These are cheap, I know, by your standards. But $700 is very cheap for Omaha, too. And all these things would be higher prices on the left. Probably we're leaving more like $23,000 to $25,000 per month on the table now. But that's because we just charge less money. And so we have people that can have housing on their own without having government help because we help them have a price range that they can aim for. So entrepreneurs in practicing business in a more gratuitous way use private enterprise itself to help correct the unjust and wrong distribution of goods. This is distinct from the typical model when entrepreneurs accumulate wealth in order to distribute via third-party charities. So we kind of avoid the charities in the first place by not making that much money to give to charity. I actually got audited by the IRS for 2008 and 2009, and so I had to go into the IRS in Omaha to talk to them about my finances, and so I brought in these boxes full of manila envelopes with each one being a different property. I brought the 2 boxes in with me and sat, and the lady was very nice, and we talked. We had 3 meetings, and I kept on having to show her different stuff, or I didn't have the right thing, so I had to go get it and bring it next time. So we had 3 meetings over the course of about 2 weeks. And then I got a letter from the IRS 6 weeks later, and it said, "Dear Dr. Gustafson, or Mr. Gustafson, after doing a thorough investigation of you, the IRS has determined that we owe you $56. And so they haven't bothered me very much since then. But one of the things she said in our discussions was, "You're not really making a lot of money on these, and that's a red flag to us." And I said, "But I'm paying my mortgages and my bills." And she said, "Well, that's true. I can see that, but that's not the way most people do things." And I said, "I don't care. That's the way I do things." And so that was a good experience for me to realize, like, that was even a flag to the IRS. I need to maybe be careful, but that was something they realized as well, is that we weren't making a lot off of these properties. The crew that we have, let me see, did I skip one? No. These are some of the crew that we have. Some of these are still with us. This is Izzy and Richard, and Blue is there. And then Joey and Karina are up on top. But they've all become good friends to me. One time I gave a talk for a group of CEOs in the top of our First National Bank building. I gave a prayer, actually, for a CEO breakfast. I had to go there at 7. I went in my suit, and then I went home and changed into my work clothes and went and sat with my guys out on the front porch of the Vic, that green, red, and yellow house. And I thought, I am so much happier here on the porch with my homeless friends. This is like where I really like life, and I feel much more at ease here. And that's true. These people have all become an important part of our life. My son Amos, who's 3, prays for them every night. And sometimes we'll be going through and I'll be praying and they'll say, like, you forgot Tad. I'm like, yeah, Tad. Sorry, Tad forgot Tad. So he'll remind me, but he's been praying for them since before he was 2. So for the common good, benefits for others. This is kind of an odd way maybe to think about business, but it's useful to think whatever it is that you get into, like, what are ways that you're bringing about good for other people and helping provide opportunities for them? Financially, freedom, and privileges were 3 of the ones that I thought of. It's like with tenants, we provide rent savings, and we're pretty gracious and flexible. So that gives opportunities to them, right, that they wouldn't have otherwise. Helps their lives be better. That's what the common good is about, is helping enable everyone to have flourishing. Freedom from ownership. It's not their leak. Talked about that. Privileges, decent housing at a low price. With workers, give them money, loans, gracious to them. When I first met Mike, I brought him to Burger King, and he said, "This is amazing." Like he was looking at the menu forever. I was like, "Haven't you been here?" He said, "I haven't gone out to eat for 3 years because I don't have any money." I was like, "Wow, okay." And so helping people that maybe didn't have very much to help them have that sort of thing. And also to have social capital, like they know me and we're friends. And so they can say, yeah, I know Andy Gustafson, he teaches at Creighton. So that makes a difference in their lives. Subcontractors, money and loans. One of my subcontractors, I helped him buy a trailer park. And another one, I helped him buy the homestead that he lives on. So just helping them in ways like that. So anyway, there's a lot of things here for different ways to contribute to the common good. And I think no matter what business you're in, you could probably think about ways that you're contributing. And it's good to think about that. So you think more about what you're doing. This is one of the more important slides, probably in the whole presentation. But eliminating the many different types of poverty. Again, a solution which focuses only on the financial needs of an individual, rests ultimately on a very thin anthropology, does not meet the needs of human beings in fullness of their complexity as children of God. The economy of communion recognizes there are varieties of human poverty, of which monetary poverty is one type. So we all know about monetary poverty, and that's usually what we think of when we think of the poor, the economically poor. But in some sense, that's one of the least important of these, I think. Financial poverty is important, but I find that these others really are the thing that are most important to me anyway to solve. There's a poverty of community. You don't even have to be poor financially to have a poverty of community. But some of the guys who maybe were living in the park and drinking alcohol all the time before I met them, I don't know if you've hung around with drunk people in the park much, but when you do, you hear the same stories over and over, right? Every 10 minutes or so, they'll tell you the same story because they kind of forget what they're saying. So it's not really community just to drink together in the park. So they start to, when they hang out with our group, they start to have people they know and kind of trust. And so there gets to be a community that we've built. There's also a poverty of work people can have. I believe that human beings want to have tasks. I like tasks. When we had Vivian, my wife finally I caved and we bought a dishwasher. We'd never had a dishwasher for the first 14 years of our marriage. We got a dishwasher, but now I frustrate her because I like to wash dishes. I just do. I like to wash them and then they're done. And I like that experience. Whereas if I put them in the dishwasher, then they're going to get washed and then I have to take them out. And it takes a lot longer. So I just like tasks and I like completing them. And that's the way human beings are. We want purpose. We want some sort of work, something to be doing. Now, before, if my guys would have gone into Ideal Hardware Store, they would have said, "What are you doing here? Are you here to steal candy bars? Or why are you here?" They would have had no reason to be there. Now, if they go in, they say, "What are you doing here?" Like, "Oh, Andy Gustafson, I work for him." You need some paint. Oh, what kind can I get you, sir? Right? And so they're treated with a certain kind of respect because they have a place, they have a purpose. And so when you ask them, like, what do you do? They don't say, I sit in the park and drink alcohol. They say, oh, I work for Gustafson. We fix up houses. We've done a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of things. So they've got that pride, right, that comes with that. Existential poverty, just like, what am I doing on this earth? I'm 50-something years old. I don't have any career. I don't have anything to speak of. That leads to pretty severe existential angst, honestly. And that can lead to a sense of, there's no one out there really watching for me. There's no one making sure my life goes well, because my life's not going well. But once these other things start to fall into place, I've found that the spiritual poverty goes away too. They start to feel like there is some sort of providence at work in the world that's helping me and making my life better. And so they come to some sort of faith through that. These are some of the guys. All three of these guys are gone now. But they are all friends that would come over and drink coffee. This was in winter day, so we're drinking inside instead of out on the porch. But that was part of the community. Economy of gift and love. In economics, gift is not necessarily a good thing because it doesn't really make any sense. It's not efficient. But these are a few good quotes, I think, about how the EOC thinks about an economy of gift or of giving rather than an economy of having and getting. Unlike the consumer economy based on a culture of having, the economy of communion is an economy of giving. EOC entrepreneurs find meaning in the gift giving and love they can show others through business practices. This makes business activities more meaningful and fulfilling. Joy. This is a gift that EOC gives. It's the happiness, well-being, and deep satisfaction that comes from living a meaningful life integrated with our most heartfelt beliefs and resulting from the relationships that grow out of giving and receiving. And the last one, and John Mundell, by the way, is a great EOC entrepreneur from Indianapolis. He's just a good friend and a great person. And then the last one from a friend in Brazil, EOC isn't a matter of being generous, of giving charity. It isn't philanthropy or merely a way of providing assistance. It has to do with acknowledging and living the dimension of giving and giving of oneself as essential to one's own existence. So, Hobbes, if you know Hobbes, life is nasty, brutish, and short. And maybe part of the problem with Hobbes was he's coming out of a Calvinist background. I'm Protestant. I'm not Catholic. I'm kind of a practicing Catholic, but not confessing. But Hobbes is coming out of a background that's very Calvinist, and there's a strain of Protestantism that thinks that we're so corrupted by sin that we can't cooperate. We wouldn't be able to. And that's somewhat what led to Adam Smith's view that the butcher, brewer, and the baker don't actually care about anyone else. They just want to make money. But turns out they're making beer, so that's good for you. So you get bread, you get beer, and they get their mortgage paid, or whatever. And so, but that's a very individualistic, immune view of the economy. You don't have to have that view. You can have a view that actually we're in this together. I'm interested in my own concerns, my children's concerns, but I'm also actually concerned about other people's concerns too. And I want to make life better for you. And when I make life better for you, I actually feel better about that. That makes me feel good. I don't know if you've ever given something to somebody, even somebody you don't know. It's a good feeling most of us get. If you don't get that feeling, you might think about things like what's going on in your heart, right? But hopefully we come to a place and we nurture our inner self enough that we actually like to be involved with other people. We like to give to other people. And it makes us happy. And if we didn't do that, I wouldn't be as happy. And I think that's possible for us, despite sin and everything else. So that's part of what they're trying to say here. And this economy of giving might seem counterintuitive, but I think it's actually more true to our human nature. Okay, good. I got one. We're okay. Good. No, this is fine. I can do it this way. It's fine. 8. We're almost done. We're to 10. And 11 and 9 and 10 are pretty short. 8 is messiness and wounds of communion. So very few people read Italian economists in the United States. I don't know why. But Luigino Bruni has written probably 80 books. And I love Luigino Bruni's work. But he has this book called The Wound and the Blessing. It's not an easy read, but it's a great book. And one way of doing business, our way of doing business, this is me talking, is more complicated. It involves getting personally involved in the personal problems, messiness of the lives of our tenants and workers and accepting those as our own. And I could give you plenty of stories of ways my life has become complicated by getting involved in the lives of my tenants and also of my workers, my good guys that work for us. And this is the point, though, from Bruni's book. Business policies will try to protect us from others' personal problems. It's business, it's nothing personal. But at times, evaluating people based on credit scores and past history prevents us from participating in redemptive acts and the blessings that follow through business. So business policies are meant to keep you at an arm's distance from me. If you've got a lot of personal problems, then we're probably not going to do business because those problems will probably become my problems. If you don't have enough money in your bank account and you're going to owe me rent every month, why would I want to rent to you? And that's got to be at play, right? I can't just have people that never pay me rent. But there are some people that have had bad credit in the past, and then I make a decision I think maybe I'm going to give this person a chance because it's hard for them. We've had people that have come out of prison. It's very hard for people coming out of prison to get housing. They usually have to live in halfway houses for a while, and then they're trying to get their own place. It's almost impossible. And so we've rented to those people on occasion. I remember one where we rented to 3 of them. They moved into a house. I talked to the neighbors to make sure, are you guys okay? We're going to rent it. They're like, we'll give it a try. And one of the guys died. One of the guys fell off the wagon. And the third one still lives there 10 years later. And he's very successful. And it's just been a joy to see him thrive. But he never would have. And 1 out of 3 made it. But he never would have had we not given him that chance. We've had people that are sex offenders. I had one just recently. I ended up saying no to him, partly because the building that he wanted to move into with his fiance had 2 single women in it, so I wasn't going to do it, even though it was for child porn on the web. And I'm not sure exactly what all the details were, but after I heard that, and they didn't tell me up front at the beginning, I was like, I don't think so. And it only happened less than 10 years ago. So, but if someone comes and says, I'm a sex offender, but it happened this way 20 years ago, now I'm married, I've got 4 kids, but okay, I'm going to give you a chance probably. So I give people a chance if I can. But when you rent to people that don't have as good a financial credit, you do get harmed sometimes. But that's just part of it. But if I wouldn't open myself up to them, I also wouldn't have the people who feel so loyal because Annie kept me going, helped me get a chance through it, right? So you make such good relationships, those make up for the ones where you get stabbed in the back or get your feet cut out from underneath you. So just keep on going forward with those kind of opportunities when you can. So you don't often think about, again, if you think about business as accumulating more for yourself, you don't think about how can I help make other people flourish in the world through business. But you can. If you give people a chance at a job or something like that, you can really help them to flourish. The kinds of poverty we talked about. You're helping them financially, you're helping them in terms of community, you're helping them with purpose. You're doing all those things when you hire someone or bring them in. So business, if it is to be a humanizing influence in society, must be rooted in a cultural soil that draws upon the graces that structure business towards authentic human development. Without such an embedded reality, business eventually defaults to a narrow form of instrumental rationality based only on efficiency and profitability. ESC business stand as evidence that an integration of deep culture in business, of faith and work, are possible. And so I think that's true, and I think that there's a way in which you can practice business and also be very concerned about helping others to flourish. The last point here is divided life. It's no fun to live like a schizophrenic existence, where you've got your personal values over here, and then you've got to put those aside and live out your business values over here. That's not a good way for anyone to live. So dividing the demands of one's faith from one's work and business is a fundamental error that contributes to much of the damage done by business in our world today. That's from Vocation of the Business Leader based on Caritas in Veritate by Pope Benedict a few years back. But an integrated life, as Pope Francis said, is you see that entrepreneur is an agent of communion. By introducing into the economy the good seed of communion, we begin a profound change in the way of seeing and living business. So this is where you integrate things together, and your personal life begins to be very much a part of how it's outflowing into the way that you practice business. And when that can happen, I think your life will be much better, and you'll be happier for it. So these are the 10 things, or the 8 things, I guess. No, we did talk about 10, didn't we? But they're not all up here, I'm sorry. So 8 of the 10. So this is just a brief overview then. I think business can be a source of spiritual enrichment and communion. I'm excited by the opportunities and insights I've gained by getting to know the EOC movement, both to understand their vision of what business can be and get to know business people who are living out this vision of work as a vocation in a way which truly seeks to bring about communion with others and see God in all things and all persons we encounter. Business activity can be a rich source of spiritual growth for us. I think EOC provides an interesting model to consider when one's looking for business models of business which help achieve the common good. And so because I've become so excited about EOC, just this last year, applied for a Templeton Foundation grant. How do I click on that? Can I do that? I don't have a... Oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry. So we applied for a Templeton Foundation grant. Do you think it's not possible? Well, I can tell you about the grant real quick, maybe, if we can. I'm so sorry, yeah. So the grant, what we're doing is we're going to interview a whole bunch of EOC entrepreneurs. We already have interviewed one. Another one's coming this Monday to Omaha. We're going to interview 9 by the end of the semester. We're getting about 6 to 10 hours of video footage from each one. Then we're going in and getting snippets from those pieces, and they're going to be stories that they tell about unique way that they treated a customer, an employee, or whatever. And then, yeah, there you go. It's just a 2-minute video snippet. There's a famous quote from Frank Knight, the famous Chicago school economist, and he said, "We all know that business is basically the project of raising more corn to feed more hogs to buy more land, to raise more corn to feed more hogs to buy more land, to raise more corn, to feed more hogs, to buy more land, with no end in sight, particularly, except the increase of wealth." The economy of communion approach provides an alternative. It's not just about making money, but what are we doing as we make that money? How can we bring about communion in the world through our business practices? I've often had professors come to me and say, "Do you have any good articles on the economy of communion and marketing or the economy of communion and HR?" And I say, "No, there's none available." So that's what this project is about, creating those sorts of materials to use in the classroom to help get the word out about the economy of communion approach to business. The EOC project at Creighton University is funded by a $1.2 million grant from the John Templeton Foundation. The project is basically to help capture the stories of a number of EOC entrepreneurs from the economy of communion movement. Some of these entrepreneurs were in business for up to 30 years. From that video footage that we get from the entrepreneurs, we're going to, first of all, come up with a number of set videos that will be interviews with them. We are also going to take a lot of snippets from those videos, and those snippets will be used to put on a website that we'll make available for classroom use. Professors, students will be able to look at any of those snippets at any time. Each of the snippets that comes from the interviews will also have a little case study that goes along with it, as well as some additional questions for discussion in the classroom. So again, the purpose is to make this as easy for faculty to use to help their students learn about the economy of communion approach to things. And that's what makes economy of communion so special. We'd love to stay in touch with you as we move forward with this project. The easiest way for that to happen is for you to sign up here on the website. If you do that, we'll make sure to let you know as things progress along the way. This website's going to have a lot of information on it as it goes forward. Thank you. So I really didn't come here just to do a promo for the project. In fact, when Dana first talked to me, I had no idea we were going to get this grant. So, but it is a project I'm excited about, and we're already getting a lot of work done. So, yeah, pray for it. If you're a praying person, pray for it, because we would love for it to make a difference. And we're already talking to people in Brussels and Croatia and Philippines and Singapore who also want to use the material in their schools too. So it could be a cool way to help people have more hope and faith in business. So some bonus advice. This is just extra stuff, not really quite related. So I teach a class at Creighton called Social Media, AI, and the Meaning of Life. And on the first day of class, I tell the students, one thing I'd like you to do every single day, and then I want you to journal about it, is I want you to take 5 minutes to do absolutely nothing. No screen time, can't listen to music, can't talk to anyone, can't read anything. Just be with yourself for 5 minutes. And then they have to journal about it at 5 weeks. They have to do it every day. They don't. But they say, like, I got 35% good, and I got 55%, I got 75%. But after 5 weeks, at 10 weeks, and at 15 weeks, they tell me how they did. And usually at the end of the first 5 weeks, they're like, I had no idea how addicted I was to my phone. I just didn't realize. Like, I would sit there and I'd be like, oh, I'll just check I can't check my phone. One guy even said, I put my phone on buzz, and I put it down beside me, and just let it go when I was there for 5 minutes every day, just to force myself to not check my phone when it went off. And he said, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But by the time we get to the 15th week, the majority of the students are saying, this is my favorite time of the day. And some of them even say, this is a lifetime habit that you've helped me discover. I'm going to do this forever, because it's hard for us in this time of life to stay away from anything, right? And just have 5 minutes to think and stop and wait on yourself, on God, and whatever it is you wait for, and be with yourself. Your life will be better if you do that, no matter what else you do. Just help people around you become fully human. Don't overplan your life. Be open to opportunities. I was an undergrad English and philosophy major. I sure had no idea I would end up being at Creighton University teaching in the business school for 20 years and coming to places like this to talk to you. I didn't know that would happen. I had no idea, and that wasn't my ambition. When I was in undergrad, I actually lived in my 1957 Chevy for an entire 56 Chevy for an entire semester while I was going to school, just because I thought I'd be different. So I wasn't a normal person, I was not really the kind of person you'd end up being a professor, but here I am. So you don't overplan. Just be open to opportunities that come your way. Keep as many doors open as you can, because you never know. And use the opportunities you have to meet people, because your friends are the ones who help you go forward. Also be hopeful and expect good things. The more that you can be optimistic about what's coming up and have eyes of faith to see things as, oh, this is an opportunity, not a problem, that will make you a lot happier overall. Again, we had this quote at the beginning, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So just keep that in mind as you go forward. This is just some bibliography. And we can send this to whoever wants. If anyone wants this, I don't have a problem sending it. You can have the whole thing, whatever. And these are just Amos and Vivian there, and me and my wife. So please send me questions or thoughts or comments, anything. I'm easy to find at Creighton. I'm in the business school. So you can find me and send me stuff. And that QR, if you want to look at it, goes to that EOC site we looked at before. So anyway, with that, I think we're done, and then we can have some time for Q&A or whatever else. So thanks.
Talk to the mic, and you got to give it back to me so I can bring it up to our speaker. We have a second.
Thank you, Andrew Gustafson. Gustafson. Thank you. My question would be, would you say that what is missing from radical capitalism and integrated socialism is the lack of individual charity?
Say more about that. What do you mean?
So in radical capitalism, the mindset is the destruction of the other, and in integrated socialism or radical socialism is the destruction of the individual. Would you say that it's the lack of love?
That's kind of a radical way to put it, maybe. But yeah, I don't think socialism intends to destroy the other, and I don't think capitalism. There's sometimes you want to defeat your competition, so you want to take their market share. So in that sense, yeah, I mean, at some level, it's a sort of a radical way to characterize it. But yeah, are you concerned about community, or do you have immunity from all others? But also, if you're so concerned about community, you can lose the individual in that and lose the dignity of the individual. So how do you bring both of those together is the trick. So I think EOC is trying to do both respecting the dignity of the individual, but also being very concerned about the common good in the community and what's best for all of us, not just for you. Yeah. It's a hard balance.
Thanks for the talk. My question is about the scope of EOC. So throughout the talk, it seemed like you were focused on entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
As someone who's worked in business before I became a professor as well, it's like a Fortune 500 company. It's kind of difficult to change the culture that you walk into. And so I guess, does EOC apply to business more generally, or is this strictly an entrepreneur approach?
That's a fantastic question, and I'm so glad you asked it, because it's a perfect question to ask. Of these entrepreneurs we're talking to, or EOC, we call them EOC entrepreneurs, two of them are not two of them, one of them has worked for Cargill for 30 years, so he was in a huge company like that. But he's from the Focolare movement, which started EOC, and so he has just tons of stories to share of how he made decisions in his capacity as a mid-level executive to make decisions that were really not normal business practice, but he had the authority to do so within that. A really nice story, though. Nick Son is another one who's built a number of companies. He's been CEOs of companies with boards that he had to answer to. He didn't own the company. That's one thing, as you say, if you own your own company, you can do whatever the hell you want. But if you are working for a board or a publicly traded company, then you have to answer. This is a story. It's a very brief story. But it's a good one, I think, to this point. Nick gives a story of where one time, he hired this new marketing VP for their company, and she just didn't get it. She didn't understand the product right, and so he was like, we got to let her go. Talk to the board, like, I'm going to have to let her go. They're like, okay, whatever you decide, Nick. So he's a COO, or CEO, you decide, or COO, I think, at that time, at that company. And so he brought her in and sat her down, and, they had a good relationship, but, he's like, it's one of those things, you just got to go. You're not doing what we need. She sits down and bursts into tears, and he's like, I haven't even told her she's fired yet. What's going on? He said, Marcia, what's wrong? What's wrong? She said, Nick, I just found out I was diagnosed with cancer, and so I don't know what I'm going to do for work for the next 6 months. I don't know. I'm going to go through all these treatments. And she was just falling apart. He's like, Marcia, don't worry. You know that our company we're here for every person, and you're going to be fine. We'll figure it out. And she said, oh, thank you, Nick. Thank you. I didn't know but it could be months. He said, it's okay. We'll take care of it. And he's like, well, I got to go talk to my team. And he's like, okay, guys, what do you think? Is this the right decision? Are you going to support me if I go to the board? And they're like, yeah, Nick, I think this is the right thing. That's what our company is about, treating everyone with dignity and helping everyone. We watch out for everybody. So go to the board. Yeah, we're behind you. So he goes to the board. He tells the board, well, I know I asked you, we need to fire Marcia, but it turns out Marcia has cancer, and so I really think we need to keep her, because our value that we're for every person, and we're going to also have to hire someone to replace her while we keep on paying her, and I know it's a big salary, but I just think we need to do it, because that's who we are. And there was total silence in the boardroom for a little bit. And they're looking at him like, I hope you know what you're doing. What? This is not normal. And finally, one of the guys spoke up, and he said, Nick, I commend you. This was very courageous of you to bring this forward to us, and it's a hard decision to make, but I support you. I think you're right. Any one of us in this room would want to be treated the same way as you're treating her, and I think that's what we should do. And then everyone piled on. Yeah, that's right. No one wanted to be the bad guy then and say, no, wait a second, what about the money? So it worked. But Nick, he didn't own the company, but he went to bat for what he thought was the right thing to do, and it was going along. That wasn't an EOC company, but it was an EOC value that he had brought into the company. So there's ways like that. And I think it doesn't matter if there's just ways to treat people. A lot of these things, the 10 principles, I think you can practice them, even if you're a low-level person, much less a middle-level manager. But most of us live our life as mid-something. We're not at the top owning the whole thing. So that's my answer, I guess, to you. I think it is possible, and it's really important to the EOC project that we make sure people realize this is something you can do no matter where you're at in the scale. Even if you think, well, I work for a nonprofit. Well, you still participate in the market. There's ways in which you can influence the market in ways that are more humane. So, great question.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was great. I have more of like a personal business question because I think that the work you do is incredible with hiring people who might not be able to get a normal corporate job. Do you plan on expanding your business past like local, I know you said you'd do it in your hometown and stuff like that, or do you work with other people who have entrepreneurships like this outside of like locally?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I don't want to expand it personally because I'm like maxed out, especially with having 2 kids under 3. That like began to be a new, like my wife was already like, okay, we got enough. And then like, okay, Vivian and I don't want more things to do right now. So I would say this EOC project is a way for me to spread. Like I would love you to do it. Why don't you do it? You can be a person that does it, and you don't have to do it with rental, whatever. But I would say, so one of the guy who works for me in my hometown, he's a great guy. But when I first brought him on, he'd had some issues in his past, and he sort of had a scarlet letter on him in our hometown. And so a lot of people didn't want to work with him, didn't want to be around him, and I worked with him. And I said, you can work for me. There were certain situations where I wouldn't put him in. But he did a lot of work for me for the last 25 years, since 99. And got remarried, has a great family, good guy, goes to our church. And a few years back, he said, hey, do you think you could help me with buying this trailer park on the edge of town? And I said, yeah, I think I can. There's a few tens of thousands of dollars for the down payment for my end of it to help him. And so we worked that out, and he paid it off. And it was, I think, $600,000 to buy the whole trailer park at that time. And now, he talked to me not very long ago. He was with his wife over at our house in my hometown. And he said, well, we're going to have that paid off in 3 years. I said, that's so cool. I'm so happy that you're now an entrepreneur of your own. And I know how he treats people, because he's told me stories about different things he does to go and help them. This woman, like her husband, like she's a quadriplegic and her husband died, whatever. And so he's helping her with all these different things. Like he's got great stories of his own. But he's talked to me a lot, like, what do you think I should do here? Because he knows my heart and how I do things differently. And so then, but when he was at our house, he said, so this guy from Denver offered us first $1.5 million, and now he's offering us $2 million for this thing. And my friend is not a wealthy man. He's just not. He's done handyman work his whole life, and he's in his 50s. And he said, and his wife was sitting beside him, he said, but I said no. And his wife was like, he said, Gene's not very happy with me about it, but what are those people going to do out here in rural Nebraska? They can't live anywhere else. And I know that guy's going to double their rent, and they can't afford that. I'm not going to do it. I'm like you're turning down $2 million because you care about people. Like, he's my franchise movement, I guess, And so you tell people about how to do things, and then they do it that way. And they experience the joy of it, and then I don't have to take on more projects, right? So that's, I guess, my answer. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's how I'm trying to spread the word so other people will do it too somewhere. Not rentals necessarily, but whatever. Yeah, hi, Holly.
I'm Holly Taylor Kuhlman. I teach in the theology department. I just wanted to very quickly underscore something that you just said about thinking about how these principles work when you're not in charge of everything, but you're in charge of what you're in charge of. And you noted the way in which the economy of communion grows out of the Focolare movement. And I just wanted to say, especially to students who might be interested, that movement kind of has a really interesting way of thinking about how the sort of things that Dr. Gustafson is talking about can be practiced in actually any circumstance in which you find yourself. So they would talk about what it would look like to live like this in relationship to education, or in relationship to your family, or the arts. It just goes on and on and on. And so there is this kind of other thing that's bigger and deeper underneath it. And some people call it a spirituality, kind of like, an Ignatian spirituality, Dominican spirituality. But if you're interested in learning more about that, it's very easy to get more information about that, and you could certainly ask me.
Great. Thank you for bringing that up. folklore movement really founded the EOC.
Thank you so much for the talk. Your work is really incredible, and I think the concept of doing business as a spiritual practice is very enlightening to me. I have a question about your title. That's a very interesting title to me. So I've been thinking about it. So in the Republic 1, Socrates asked Cephalus about what is the greatest good that brings to you from you being wealthy. And Cephalus responded that, well, when you have money, when you're wealthy, this allows you to pay your debts and to live a just life. And then there we came across the first definition about justice as being able to, like, as paying your debts. So I'm curious about how you would respond to the worry that when you talk about doing business, how business can make you become a good human being, would shape our understanding of being a good human being means to, let's say, help others in need, or help or pay your tax properly.
Yeah, that's a good question. I like it. And when I said about becoming a better human being, I don't mean like I'm better than others, but just like I'm thriving, right? That I'm thriving more fully. And I think there's a sense in which, because I'm a Christian, I think like I have a bigger debt here. Like anything I own isn't mine. It's God's. And so justice isn't about me just paying the debt. It's like I have, what is mine to begin with, right? Like what's my debt and what's not my debt? If I have, the Catholic Church in Rerum Novarum says pretty clearly, like private property is important. Everyone needs to have private property, because then we're stewards and we're acting like God that way. And also we have then something to give to our children or our grandchildren. So it's important to have private property for responsibility and also for stewardship, and just because that's part of who we are. We all should have a little piece of this. But once you have enough, and this is also in Rerum Novarum, once you have enough for yourself and your own, then you have an obligation to help everyone else. A lot of times in my Protestant background, there's a notion of a tithe. It comes from the Old Testament. Give 10% of everything you get to God. And that's good. I think you should follow that. But I think that's not enough, really. Like if I have plenty, I should be giving much more than 10%. So it's when it comes to debts, like I don't even know what that, it's like beyond debt in some ways, right? Like everything I have that's extra, I have an obligation to give. Do I have a debt to them? I have an obligation at some level. Like I should be helping others to have joy too if I have plenty for myself. So that's how I don't know if that quite answers your question, but it's a way of thinking about debt. I don't think about it in terms of debt necessarily, but I think about it in terms of like, what should I do with this? Like I should contribute to more than just myself. I said this to students this morning when I met with them, but I think one of the biggest dangers we have sometimes when we talk ourselves out of giving to other people is my family. Well, it's for my family. It's for my kids. Well, I want my kid to go wherever they want to go, and they wouldn't have good enough grades, so I have to pay for them full tuition to go to Yale or whatever. Like, is that really a good use of your money? Like, it's for my children. And we usually say, okay, it's for your children, so you can spend whatever you want. I have Amos, who's 3. I spend way too much money on him. Usually I spend it on like I bought him a drum set. It cost $120. But it's a cool drum set. He doesn't need a drum set. My wife's like, why are you buying a 2.5-year-old a drum set? I said, well, maybe he'll like to play the drums. And I bought him a harp, and I bought him a trumpet. And my son is a dangerous vice for me to spend money on that I could be doing something probably more constructive with. So that for me is a challenge. Like, I want to just give everything to my children now, but that can also keep me from contributing towards the common good and the welfare of others that I don't know, strangers that are far away. So that's another important part of that, I think. Like, who do I have obligations to? Hi.
What are like some challenges you've had like running your business like that, and like how would you work through like those hardships?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you superficial, and then I'll tell you more personal. So we've had times where, like, because I didn't get the rent that was owed to us, I had to, like, go to the bank and be like, I need a bridge loan here. Like, can I just pay the principal down, but not pay, or not, sorry, can I just pay the interest, but not the principal this month? Because I'm like $1,500 short because I've got enough people that aren't paying rent right now. So that has been, like, personal difficulty. Like, it's not hardship. Like, we're not going homeless or not being able to buy milk. But it's hard. I'd say harder is when, like, I have actually, like, helped people quite a bit, and then they have turned around and maybe on social media said things about me that weren't true, or called me names on social media, or, you know, brought it. One time a woman said she didn't pay rent for 6 months, and then she said that she had been dropping it off in cash, but I never got any of it. And she said, then she had a group around that said, you know, Gustus, this landlord is a slumlord, and he is taking her money and he's making her move out. And I was like, most of what they were saying was not true. I did make her move out because she hadn't paid rent for 6 months. But she kept changing her story about where she'd put the money and stuff. And I always have told them to pay cash or pay checks or money orders so you have a receipt so we can all be on the same page. And so in that case, like, I had people from out of state calling me about telling me how terrible a person I was. And they didn't even know about the situation. But somebody had done a social media campaign about that. That was a really hard week for me, because when you're a business ethics professor at Creighton and you have things being said about you that are really negative on social media, even though it's in a very small little segment of social media, it still makes you feel bad. I don't like people to say bad things about me. And so that was hard. And to know that she did that, right? And there's been just one other instance where that kind of thing happened. So those things are hard. This summer, I've had people, renters for now 25 years. I've never had to evict someone until this summer. And finally, there's this woman who just stopped talking with me. And I was like, I'd go to her door and try to talk to her, and I could hear her coughing, but she wouldn't answer. Like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I've run out of I was saying, you can just move out. I won't come after you for any money. But you haven't paid rent since last November, you know, and it was June now. And so in that case, I said, I don't know what else to do. So we had to go through the eviction process. I didn't even know how to do it because I'd never done it before. And I didn't like that at all. And we were in the courtroom together, and it was sort of silly because, like, there was she didn't have anything to stand on. She just wanted to, like, make me have to go to court. And I didn't like it, anyway, those were two more personal ones where it really was not fun. I didn't like it at all. But I had to do those things. So was that those good examples? Okay. Yeah, thanks for asking that. Dredging up all that stuff. No, it's okay.
So that's not like the perfect note to end on, but we are at time. So please make up for the oh yeah, Dana. Yeah.
I swear. Just so you know, to underscore something Dr. Kuhlman said, Dr. Kuhlman in theology, also myself in theology and public and community service studies, know a little bit about the economy of communion and a lot about the Focolare movement. So if you want to talk with us more about that, we're available. And I also just want to let you know, because I know we have some business majors here, Dr. Gustafson spent a lot of time with some faculty from the business school. There are a lot of conversations about how to carry this forward. And so if any of you want to be a part of those conversations, please talk to your business professors, talk to myself, talk to Dr. Keating from Humanities, Dr. Bernhoff, Dr. Kuhlman. We want to support continuing this forward, and also for faculty who want to get more involved in those conversations. Please talk to us. And with that, let me encourage everybody to go to the reception. But first, a final thank you to Dr. Gustafson.